When massive collectivization began in 1949, that first year, and also 1950, ended quite well. This is interesting. Even 1951 was not so bad, but 1952 was catastrophic. 1953 was a little better when Khrushchev came to power after Stalin's death. Then the September plenum was held, where they actually began to think about ordinary people. During the noon break, a concert is presented right in the fields. Agriculture was a part of party policy, not an economic endeavor, and run by the political departments of the tractor depots. The search for kulaks continued. Agricultural production fell off. Collective farmers survived thanks to their garden plots and cows. For the first time, the best brigade of the kolkhoz uses the new hand seeder. The first agricultural reforms were carried out in September 1953. State purchasing prices were raised and the state quotas and taxes were lowered. Even so, most of the reforms failed, for they hadn't been thought through, such as new but unsuitable means for growing potatoes, the compulsory planting of corn, despite Estonia's unsuitable climate and soil, and the growing of sunflowers and dandelions for the production of latex. In industry, a piecework system was adopted. Men began to hustle because now they could earn 3 times more. Many became sick from working too hard. Most of the men worked in the mines for a reason, simply because they couldn't find work elsewhere. This year, a new cultural center was opened in the mining town of Kohtla-Nõmme. Lots of miners came to see how their co-workers perform favorite folk dances.
Arvukkalt kogunes kaevureid vaatama, kuidas nende töökaaslased esitavad armastatud rahvatantse.
And then the building of a new socialist city began. They said that a new big city was to be built. Our men worked on the project on the weekends out of their free time. As it turned out, Estonians couldn't live there. Russians were brought in instead. The former Estonian residents weren't allowed to return to Narva. The immigrant workers turned Narva into a Russian town. A new beautiful city replaces war ruins. It is 1956. The economic reforms provided a sharp contrast to the previous severe political pressure. Mass terror, no longer deemed appropriate, was replaced by liberalization, rehabilitations and amnesties, initially for criminals. In 1954, surviving Estonians began to return from the distant parts of the Soviet Union that they had been deported to. The 20th Party Congress condemned Stalin's crimes. This wasn't due to Khrushchev, but to the new political climate. Thanks to Khrushchev, our intelligentsia was freed from the prison camps. 80% of the imprisoned Estonians were freed, those who had been in the German army and the Home Guard. But some of us remained imprisoned for years to come. The former inmates of the camps had a desire to work when they returned home. They were starving for work. Khrushchev's thaw began with the 20th Congress. The Soviet system no longer used mass terror and avoided direct confrontations with the West. Hungary became the symbol of liberalization and democratization in the socialist camp. Imre Nagy, a communist idealist, was head of state. He wanted to develop socialism with a human face by legal means. The Budapest uprising began on October 23, 1956. The government promised sweeping reforms and declared Hungary to be a neutral state. On November 4th, the Fraternal Red Army attacked Hungary. Hungarian civilians and soldiers defended Budapest for 49 days. Tens of thousands were killed, and the city was destroyed. 10,500 Estonian deportees and political prisoners came home. The USSR was now a state with a double standard. Till then, the Soviets had openly used overt terror for ideological and political reasons. Now the repressions were carried out secretly. The MGB, the Ministry of Security, became the Security Committee, or KGB, in 1954. Officially, it answered to the Council of Ministries. Gavin's team stayed in power. Ideological change was very slow, but the forbidden poetry of Maria Under and Gustav Suits was now published. The Western states, who were preoccupied with the Suez crisis, didn't react to Hungary's desperate cry for help. Hungary lost its fight for freedom, and with that died all hopes for the liberalization and democratization of socialism. Those were the brutal weeks of broken illusions. The 20th Party Congress awakened great hopes, but these died with the events of October and November 1956 in Hungary. Everyone could see that the Soviet system hadn't really changed, and that the attitude of the West about defending democracy and freedom had not changed either.